Ich fange schon mal an. Grüße euch. Ich bin Erich Moechel, ich arbeite für den ORF, zwar für die Website. Vielleicht seid ihr in früherer Zeit mal über Futures on ORF.at drüber gefallen. Ich war dafür verantwortlich, bis mir diese schöne Tech-Website sozusagen unter dem Arsch wegverkauft wurde durch eine Gesetzesänderung. Es war nicht mehr erlaubt für öffentlich-rechtliche Anstalten, Netznachrichten zu machen. Das nur, ich bin seit 30 Jahren Journalist, seit 1990 online und seit 1997 benutze ich PGP. Und seit ungefähr 15 Jahren bin ich hinter einer gewissen Sorte Leute her, die ich für eine Gefahr für die Demokratie halte. I'll switch to English now to spare certain people the troubles translating it. They're not good in that either. So we are under civil society networks are under persistent attacks by military forces. That's the fact. Military budgets are used to attack civil society. It's difficult to defend oneself, and if you defend yourself, you defend everybody else. You help defending everybody else. That's the point. But first, we ought to know who are they and what they are doing. So, know thy adversary first. They collect much of all data they can collect. We don't know to which extent, but to a high extent. Analyze a small fraction, interpret tiny parts, and understand less, much less. So they are not good in interpretation, that could be a possible danger for us if they misinterpret our communications. So they all rely on traffic data. Who communicates where, with whom, when. They do communication network analysis, and they maintain a vast collections of identifiers. Identifiers can be anything. Your browser configuration is one of the foremost identifiers that is being used. They use cookies of commercial internet companies stored in your browser. So they've got all the data from telco networks. Well, you should know this. They are good in this. They're really good in this. That's the bad news. They closely track everybody who talks, writes, or otherwise communicates about their activities. So you're amongst the targets, many of you. They just collect it and say, oh, this is this part. Let's keep it there for further analysis. What they can't do, they can't break cryptography. All the time they talk about breaking cryptography, they are not breaking cryptography. They break key exchange protocols assisted by random number generators that are not random, and I have proof of that, and poison standards of used in civil society by influencing the gremia. See, the ITF. We found 26 Itf Draft Standards co-authored by NSA staffers from 1975. They did the first in 1975 and then stopped for 7 or more years. 2/3 of these drafts, some of them became standards, are date from 2009 until now. So they had 8 or so IETF documents from 1975 to 2009. And all the rest dates from 2009. There is something fishy going on, you know? So I'll show you 2 examples. Well, starts here. Let's start here. One of these drafts was called extended random. This is a protocol extension of the TLS protocol. So when it was introduced in 2008, it was not approved because the engineers said at the IETF, the civilians said, oh, yes, we know that should be doing, you tell us that this is that does something usual and it's efficient, but we don't know what. We don't see it. Can you explain? They couldn't. To say we need it, industry needs it, and so. We looked a bit back and then we saw this extended random dated back to another effort as early as 2006. So the NSA Bull Run program started much earlier than we thought. And the author is NSA Information Assurance Technical Chief. Her name is Margaret Salter, and it was her who introduced both of these, both unsuccessfully. So in 2008 or so, 2 Microsoft cryptographers, Ferguson and Shumoff, found another thing, a dual elliptic curve a random number generator. You know, for the encryption, you need random numbers for the encryption process. If the random numbers are not random, it's no real encryption. It can be re-engineered. So there was this elliptic curve random. You see, there are always elliptic curves around. They introduced this as a standard. And there was critique, because critics said, like Shumoff and Ferguson, what does this do? It's not even faster than any other random generators, and so on. They couldn't make out for what use it is. So recently, a group of cryptographers led by Matthew Green from Johns Hopkins University and a dozen others tried this with the RSA B-safe suite. This is close to everywhere on the machines. And they tried ECDRBG together with the extended random extension. And they were really surprised. They could crack the elliptic curve random number generators, took them 2 or 3 hours. When the extended random protocol extension was added, decryption was sped up with a factor of 65,000. So it took them 2 seconds to break the encryption, and not 3 hours. So this is it's always the same pattern. Protocol extensions that are somehow useful, elliptic curves, and a blockchaining mode called Galois counter mode. All elements under suspicion here were criticized before, as we know. Here we have Ferguson warning of Galois counter mode to use it in real-time protocols. Real-time protocols means encrypted voice over IP telephony. Well, it became a NIST standard, National Institute of Standards and Technology, in the USA, nevertheless in 2007. And in 2014, there was an NSA draft at the IETF suggesting Galois counter mode for SRTP. This is nothing but an encrypted real-time protocol. So, you know, you can start understanding now how they do it. Elliptic curve algorithm always involved. First comes an NSA-led NIST standard, because they are leading there. They are leading the security groups in the National Institute of Standards and Technology in the USA. Let me recall when I started analyzing the ETSI surveillance documents back in 1999, I found all relevant documents by using one term for search. And you know which term it was? It was lawful, because every document had lawful interception on it. There are some similarities here, because all these elements introduced by NSA staffers are praised as effective. So I searched for effective, and I found. So here we are. This turned up in ETSI in 2011. We couldn't make sense out of it, because it doesn't make sense. It's a key breaking scheme at the key exchange level. So when both parties start to generate a common session key, this mechanism comes in. And you see, they're showing two handsets here. That's plain wrong. That's plain deception. Really, it is one handset, can be a tablet, a smartphone, whatever, communicating via HTTPS with some website. And that's the way they do it. But there was one point we couldn't explain then in 2011, and now we can explain it after Edward Snowden. The entire process relied on random number generators that produced no random numbers. This was introduced to the third generation partnership project. This is very closely related to the European Telecom Standards Institute. This is the work group name, LI's Lawful Interception. In autumn, as early as autumn 2010, by the secretary of this group. This guy's name is Ian Cooper, and he's from the National Technical Assistance, whatever. This is a GCHQ unit. This guy is the secretary of this group. So these are parts of the discussion. Difficulties can arise when LI mechanisms are not engineered into systems at early stage. I think that explains all. You have to do it very early, so the process will function neatly. That's Mr. Cooper as he wrote it. By the way, anybody in here who wants these documents, I have the whole set here, and you can look it up. There is much more in it than I can show you, and I would appreciate if some people that are really good in crypto, not dithering in crypto as I do, would like to analyze it. Said, oh, UK government developed another key exchange format which supports SLI requirements. This is the UK method. There were discussions in this group which method they should apply. So it has additional benefits, such as low latency. It's quick, it's fast. You can do it on an industrial scale. That's the effectivity of this measure. Other than proposed, this is the ETI key-breaking scheme. It somewhat follows the procedures of, well, a court decides these people should be put under surveillance, then they start breaking their encryption. This is all about mobile networks, about nothing else. It's all mobile. And so the my key, I pay key scheme of ETI resembles traditional law enforcement methods. The British method does not resemble civilian methods. It's military style because they break any key that appears on the net and store it. And if you manage to get into the key exchange, when the key exchange mechanism started, when you go to a website that uses HTTPS, there will be a session key and that will be dropped thereafter, and this will be composed of parts of both elements of both secrets, as well as on the website and on the handset. So both, that's what we learned then. Both approaches fully rely on non-random numbers generated by a random number generator. You have here, by 2010, that was all already in use. The document of this guy is called From a UK Perspective, as it seems that had been introduced around 2000, as early as late 2008 or 2009. That corresponds nicely with all the other news from that time. The NSA Bluffdale data center construction started. Similar mechanisms are being deployed in US mobile networks. And there was one crypto breakthrough reported by James Bamford. He is the authority on the NSA. He wrote the first book on the NSA, The Puzzle Palace, in 1988. And if Bamford says so, it is so. At least in the past, it was always according to his reporting. So there was a crypto breakthrough. And at the same time, these handsets turned over the entire mobile market, had turned around. Nowadays, there are just these handsets around. So apparently what the NSA and the GCHQ do, they use some kind of bombardier beetle principle. Do you know this bug? Bombardierkäfer. Es ist eine Laufkäfersorte. This beetle has two different liquids in two different chambers of his body, and in case of defense or attack, these two liquids that are per se harmless, each one is harmless, but if you mix them and put them into a combustion chamber, the whole thing gets 100 degrees Celsius hot and explodes. A similar mechanism happens at the standardization level. Extended random, we can't make much out of it, but we don't know what it is useful for. It's just another extension for TLS, okay. We don't know what to make out of it. dual EC DRBG. Yes, another random number generator proposed to be very fast. It isn't as fast as said. Well, what should we do of that? Combine them and bam. That's how they work, because it's not so easy to smuggle entirely flawed standards into a collegium where there are first-class cryptographers in. So we have here, these things are slim, they are lean, and they are pretty fast, even if the processors can't match the bigger, these one on the bigger machines. Why? Because they are lean. They have lean crypto, they have lean security, and lean randomness. This is fast. If you use crypto that is not really crypto, it will be faster than real encryption. That's natural. So this is the scheme. Two different factors combined. So don't despair. Backlash is underway. But right now, I can only recommend, don't use a mobile handset to do HTTPS. Don't do it. If you're a Vodafone customer, you'll have the MyKSeki scheme, the British scheme, implemented in the network. So your secret part of the key will be compromised immediately and stored as long as it is valid. Nobody intervened. Well, it's a long-term strategy. Nobody intervened for a decade or more. So they were entirely free to do what they want. Bull Run, initial kickoff, Bull Run is the NSA's program to poison cryptography, to influence cryptography in the development of cryptographic methods in standards committees all around wherever they can. The British counterpart is called Moechel. That's apparently what we saw in ETSI. So industry only started addressing this now. You can bet that these guys already lost some of the capabilities. We can't tell which capabilities. Possibly a number of fiber optic cables they had access to it have gone dark in between. Industry is really worried because the NSA scandal is prone to, well, influence the business in a negative way. Because if trust is gone, you won't move on the net as you moved before, freely, openly, and unsuspectingly. I'm afraid this time is really over. You got to defend yourselves. Each future step to regain lost capabilities, that's the good news, will be pretty difficult, because now there is suspicion that did not exist before. Do not expect a quick win either. They had a reason to call these two programs on breaking crypto Bull Run and Moechel. Bull Run was the first battle in the American Civil War. Moechel was the first battle in the British Civil War, much earlier. So even the other side expected a long process. And we should know that when trying to address this. So, what can you do right now? There is nothing that can make you entirely secure, but, well, this is known. Different browsers, connections, hardware create new identifiers, and they already have difficulties to cope with the existing identifiers. They have difficulties breaking the keys on an industrial scale, storing them, and whenever the key server serves a new secret to some user, they have to redo the process. That is my hypothesis why they built the Utah data center in Bluffdale and all the efforts of the GCHQ with the new headquarters in Cheltenham. There is something fishy still inside most of the mobile handsets, and the first and foremost suspect is the Android system, because they always go after the operating systems that have most of the market share first. That's only natural. First they went after Windows, now afterwards they went after the mobile Windows, which is called Android. So the NSA runs Linux, so you should use it too. I'll tell you, when somebody came up right after the Bull Run program surfaced for the first time, people came up in the kernel programming circles around Linus Torvalds and said, oh my, we have this dual ECDRBG in the kernel. We are flawed, oh no. Linus really got angry. Read the specifications. And you saw the Linux operating system uses 6 or 7 different random number generators and does not rely on one that is possibly built into the hardware. That is my suspicion. I don't think it's the same dual ECDRBG, but they managed a breakthrough somehow around by the end of 2008, beginning of 2009, because then all the data flood came in, and it's still on the handsets. We don't know exactly where it sits because it's very hard to tell. You can't look into the hardware of these tiny things easily. It's a long, long process to re-engineer that. But don't do it now. Don't do it on mobile machines. Well, you can do it, but don't expect any security then. Use tools like Tor, Tails, and Jabber with OTR. Encrypt everyday email traffic when possible. Let's not make this complicated. 100% security is neither desired nor possible, and every step you choose to add just a bit of security to your communications complicates their processes. So you can start slowly fading out if you use some of these methods, because your profiles will start getting blurred. So these spooks are not wizards, but bureaucrats, and every step takes them years. The last effort, I remember, was the NSA's Clipper chip in 1995. Well, that was scrapped. And the Clipper chip was nothing but a piece of hardware that should have been built into every machine. It would encrypt nicely in between, but the NSA would be able to open it easily. So that did not work because industry didn't want it. It took them years to regain this position. So that's more or less, very quickly, what the gist of what I can tell you. I repeat, everybody who wants the documents, have them with me, and if you want to take a look at them, you can peer a bit into the ongoings in a standards committee that is concerned with surveillance. They call it lawful interception. That's where you can reach me. And everything I told you, I've described everything epically here on the blog I'm doing for orf.at. I've described everything, and it is in German. I just did it in English here to spare, as said, certain people the troubles of translating it. They are not good at that. They're not good at interpretation. They don't get it. They just don't get it. Imagine their analysts are bunkered in somewhere in data centers. They are not allowed to talk freely to anybody but to those who sport the same security clearance as them. They have no ideas about, well, coded speech, socialects. They can't interpret them because you just need to look at IARPA, Intelligence Advanced Research Projects Agency. This is nothing but the NSA research agency, and they're all it's full of projects that are about automatic interpretation of contents they intercepted. So don't despair. This is just a bad phase, but it will turn around, and I'll tell you, the black budget in the US is about 50 billion. That's about the same as the yearly revenue just of Google. We have not counted in Facebook, we have not counted in Microsoft, and they're all interested to make the systems more secure because they know business will go down if they don't do so. So, thank you, that's from me, and if there are any questions, I will be outside, or if you want to ask personally, I'll be available around here all the day, so you can ask either now or then in English, or we can switch to German, so it's no problem.
Fragen?
Da ist eine, glaube ich.
Dann kommen wir von zu mir.
Erich, first of all, thanks a lot. I appreciate what you're doing because you obviously researched a lot, and it's not easy. And you put yourself into the public light here to explain us what to do. So I appreciate it. What you taught us is basically to fight a war. And I want to ask you a question about it because I don't want to fight a war, basically. That's not the society I want to live in. I would like to ask you to describe a utopia, a world where you would like to live within, which is nice, which is not like a dystopia like 1984. We have seen it. It's a positive world where there is privacy, which is possible, where you can anonymize private data in a secure way, but not destroy all kinds of online banking, maps, and other services that we want to have. That's the reason why we buy these smartphones, because we want to use the new world, describe how it can be. That's my question. How can we do it in a positive way? It's not an easy question, yeah.
This is really a difficult question. Nobody of us is against e-commerce. Nobody of us is against electronic banking because it's useful. But don't do it from mobile sets. You're much more secure on a bigger machine with a real operating system on it, because there are more factors in it, more randomness, tendency more randomness, but you need to start now. And the point is, users and industry have the same interests here. And it's against their interests. It's against the interests of the secret services. So we are not in such a weak position, but, you know, industry is always a bit cautious, and they don't want to talk openly. But I would appreciate it if we had people from banks, from e-commerce websites here. We don't want to destroy anything. We like these things. We have technical affinity. So why would we destroy this? No. What we got to destroy, and I'm afraid there is some kind of war we're going to fight, because it already has started and we did not start it. The other side has started, Bull Run and Agile, a civil war. They choose these words deliberately. They know what they are doing. So we must defend ourselves on all possible levels. What I told you here is just a simple roundup of possible measures, let's say parts of a possible strategy, nothing else. The tactics are up to you, because you must defend the net. Everybody. Otherwise, we will be done. And industry will be done as well, because if nobody trusts online banking, nobody will do it. Was that sufficient, sir?
It's a question for everyone, yeah. I mean, what my boss is going to say to this kind of statement is, Martin, we have to earn money. Please understand, we have to earn money. So if the users want it, we're going to do it. We're going to make a big network of customer database, connect them. Yeah, it's not like, in theory, it's not idealistic, but we have to do it because they want to buy it, so let's do it. And I'm part of it, you know.
Yeah, but they need to fucking secure it.
Yeah, but it's expensive.
Yeah, it's expensive, sorry, but doing no business will prove more expensive.
That's what I say.
Well, that's it from me, as I don't see any more questions. Thank you.